name's Doug, and I'm the keeper of this little place. Have been now for 35 years. A quick introduction to Dode, because it's relevant to what we're going to talk about tonight. The building you're in is the most modern part. It was built in 1100 by a man called Gundulf. Soon after the Norman Conquest. It stands on the site of an earlier building, parts of which are still behind me. You can actually see if you take the trouble to look for it, which is a Saxon building, which was here about sort of late 900s, early 1000s. That sits on top of a Roman building, which is underneath where I am here. Which goes back almost 2,000 years, and the Roman building sits on top of a pagan mound. If you've come today and you've only pulled into the car park, you won't realise it, but the ground drops off terrifically there, and it's a man-made mound, and that goes back about 4,500 to 5,000 years. It's really something that is quite normal. Church on top of pagan site. It's perfectly normal. And then this place was, if you like, locked up for 650 years. After the Black Death in 1348, everybody reputedly died, and the place was simply locked up. So if you're looking for ghost stories, it's not a bad place to come, and that's what we're talking about tonight. And last week we did a sort of an overflow one. I think we're about 6 or 8 people short tonight, but if they got lost, well, they just got lost. They'll probably rock up in a couple of hours or a couple of days' time. Can we turn the music right off, Matt? Do you mind? Is that okay? I've got that sort of rumbling. I keep thinking it's my stomach.
Just grabbing this.
What are you doing? Oh, right. Don't know what that was. Anyway, yeah, talking about ghosts, because a few days' time it's Halloween. It seems appropriate that this time of year we do that. We do other talks. We've got myths and legends and ley lines coming up. We've got various other talks and various other things going on. All of the proceeds that we take tonight go to our charity, which this year is the Wisdom, was last year, the Wisdom Hospice. If anybody wants it, I'll get the adverts in, shall I? If anybody wants to come to the carol concert, you need to be on your computer at 2 o'clock on Halloween 31st, and you have to hit the button, and if you don't, by sort of 3 o'clock you won't get in. And we do 2 carol concerts where we cram about 90 people an evening in here, so it's quite intimate. If you don't like crowds, stay away. And we also have our Christmas feasts in December as well. So ghosts, right, okay, this is a good one. Who has seen a ghost? Not one of you. One of you, 2 of you, come on now, don't be frightened. Okay, a few, okay. I have to admit, this is a bit of a fraud, isn't it? I've never seen one. So you can all go home now. No, I've never seen one like I'm looking at you or you're looking at me, okay? What I have seen, as soon as I've looked at it, it hasn't been there. So anything that I've ever seen has been in my peripheral vision, there or slightly behind me. I've never looked at somebody or something and said, oh, you're a ghost or an apparition. I don't actually believe in ghosts either. So if you've come to listen to some old boy in the middle of nowhere talk about ghosts, and he tells you, first of all, he's never seen one, and secondly, he doesn't believe in them. You can make your own mind up at the end of this little chat. where I'm coming from. But most people seem to say they're a disembodied spirit. Somebody who's died, who's got sort of locked into our world and can't get out of it. I'm not sure I believe in any of that, quite frankly, but there are lots of things that I've seen over the course of my life that I don't understand. Occasionally things that I've heard that I don't understand, and that forms the basis of what we're talking about tonight, including our resident ghost, the Dode child, which I'll come on to sort of later on. First of all, it's very easy to say you've seen something or experienced something when you haven't exactly seen or experienced what you think you've seen or experienced. I'll give you a few examples. The first one, perhaps before then I should explain what I used to do for a living. That is, I was a chartered surveyor who specialised in ancient buildings. So a lot of my life was spent crawling around in old buildings, and the old ones are meant to be haunted. That's the theory. And often they were empty, they'd been locked up for years. You got used to it. It wasn't something you worried about, thought about, were even nervous about for a second. It was just your job. You'd be crawling around an empty house, perhaps 400, 500, 600 years old, 500 certainly. There's plenty of them in Kent. And thinking nothing of it, not even thinking about extra things. Not thinking about odd things, just getting on with your job. So that's where I come from. And of course, as I said earlier, I've been here for 35 years. I'll give you a few examples of where things sort of, people get some ideas about ghostly goings on, and perhaps are, well, they're not right. It's that simple. Back in the 80s, I think it was about 84, something like that, so 40 years ago, I got a job to do down in the Weald, down in Staplehurst, at a big manor house. It was initially to do, although I ended up spending 9 months down there, the initial part was just doing a survey, which was a biggish place, so it's a 3-day job. The first day, basically you have a look round, and then you do the outside. You start at the chimneys and you work your way down to the foundations. The second day you start in the roof and you work your way down to the cellars, and the third day you do the outbuildings, the swimming pools and all the bits and pieces there might be sort of added on. So I went off to do this job, and this place was reputedly haunted by a ghost that in the mornings and the evenings walked upstairs, basically, across the building, and you could hear it. Okay, so the second day, my first job was to get up into the roof, a huge roof space, far bigger than this building. And I'm up there. The place had been locked up for about 3 years, I think. A bank had repossessed it. And I was up there basically with a fairly powerful torch, just getting on with my job. It was about, I suppose, about 9-ish. The place was surrounded by big trees. And I'm up there referencing things, making notes on a dictaphone, just getting on with the job. And right at the very end, I heard, and I thought, what's that? And then, and gradually this noise came from the end of the roof towards me. Somebody was walking on the joists. And I just sort of stood there and thought, okay, this is a bit weird. Torch, nothing. And the noise went past me. Onto the other end of the roof. And I thought, well, that makes sense with the ghost and everything they talk about early in the morning, walking up and down. And it took it took a day before I realised what it was. What had happened is that this was a timber framed roof, an oak roof as it would be. The place was built in the late early 1500s. And it had had some work done in the Victorian times, and they'd put some metal tie bars through, and downstairs they'd basically tied the place together with bars, which really doesn't work with a timber frame building. And I realised that far from being a ghost, it was one very simple thing. As the sun came up over the trees, it warmed up the roof, and as the heat came along and the sun rose, the timbers were basically just creaking, and they sort of creaked in symmetry. So a perfectly logical explanation for a story that had been going there for, presumably, I don't know, it could have been going for, well, since Victorian times, because that's when they put the bars in the roof. Excuse me. So there's one example. Another good example is about this place, in actual fact. I guess it was about 30 years ago. I was up here one midsummer, sort of mid-June-ish evening, about 9:30, something like that. It was just getting dark, and a car pulled up with two young men and two young women in it. By now, they of course will be in their 50s. And they sort of the two lads stuck their head out of the sunroof. They pulled up outside at the other side, that we didn't have a gate then, and sort of said, "Here mate, this Dode Church, and I said, "Yeah." "Oh right, we come to see the headless horse." I said, "Sorry, the headless horse?" I said, "We haven't got an headless horse." "Oh yes you have," he said. "It's all over Gravesend and Rochester. Everybody's talking about the headless horse." Okay. Now with that, we had a horse in the field next door. He's deceased now. It was called Bo. It was a white horse. It was midsummer. There were lots of flies about, and he was wearing a black hood. True. Everything I tell you is true tonight. Hearing people talking and expecting he might get his normal carrot, he came up along the side of the fence. And of course, these two guys talking to me and the two girls in the back saw Bo without a head, because it was getting dark. And oh, they went. And I've never seen a car take off quite so quickly. Now, all I did, and I didn't even realise what, by looking behind me, and suddenly saw Bo there. And I thought, right, okay. What they saw was a horse without a head, because that's what their brain told them to see. I, knowing that Bo was wearing a black hood in the summer, saw a horse with a black hood on. It's that simple. Those people will still to this day, in their 50s, be telling people how they went up to Dode and saw the headless horse. Rubbish. Another one. again, we're going back a long time, about probably 25, 30 years, certainly 25 years. My wife and I, pre-COVID, would spend the winters down in Sydney. And while we were down there, basically we sort of shut up shop here, actually, tomorrow's our last ceremony. And then apart from something at Christmas, we don't really open until the 1st of April, for ceremony anyway. And my wife and I used to take that opportunity of going and getting some sun for a few months. And I got an email down there. No, it wasn't an email, it was a phone call. I don't know, we were doing emails. Anyway, they got in touch with me, the people who look after the place, the team here, and sort of were going on about a disappearing well. And what had happened was, before we went, we used to have a well just out there. Basically, it was in the way, and the kids were lobbing Molotov cocktails down it at midnight and waking people up in the valley. They reckon the flames were shooting up higher than the church. It was meant to be bottomless, and again, if you look on things online, the megalithic portal or something like that, they'll all tell you about this holy well at Dode. I don't think it's a holy well at all, it's a hole where people used to get their water. And anyway, before we went down to Oz that year, I'd said to our maintenance man, I said, look, that well's really in the way, would you mind taking it down and just concreting it over, and then putting gravel over the top, and we'll make it part of the car park. The well's still there, it's part of the history of the place. I would dearly love to be able to open it up again and go down there and excavate it, because the water table here is about 140, 150 feet, and the well is only about 42 feet in last time we sent anybody down there. That's had hundreds of years of people chucking stuff down there. That's really a little time capsule. I would love to be able to open it up again and go down there, get the archaeologists down there. It's too damn expensive because of health and safety, that's the problem. But anyway, I'd ask our maintenance man to cover it up. And what had happened, some lady had turned up one weekend reading about this holy well at Dode, and saw it, took pictures of it, click, click, click. Went away, presumably on the Sunday. On the Monday and Tuesday, our maintenance man came in, took down the well, put a concrete slab over it, and put gravel over the top. Some of you are parked over it. Fine. The next weekend, this lady, all excited about this holy well at Dode, showing pictures to her friends, came up and brought all her friends to show them. Now we have the disappearing well of Dode. Very simple. The interesting thing was that a few months later, we married a guy who made props for film sets, and I can't remember why, but we were sort of just talking about this, and he offered to make me a plastic one. He said you could really mess with people's heads. You could put the plastic one in one day, take it out the next, and you could really wind everybody up. Well, unfortunately, we never did it. I wish we had. It would have been good fun, but we didn't. So there's 3 examples of how stories start. As I said before, I'm quite convinced that the 4 people who pulled up and saw Bo with his hood on are still convinced there's a headless horse wandering the hills up here. But let's sort of go on to a few perhaps examples where I've never seen anything. I've said that before, like I'm looking at you, but I have experienced quite a few things. Once, again, we're going back a few, well, I've been retired for a long time, so everything's a long time ago. I was doing a cafe, it was a cafe, or a restaurant rather, I suppose you'd call it, down in Alston Forest. I don't know whether you know where that is, but it's down by Ashford. Quite a large area of sort of woodland down there, and I got the job to do this restaurant, and it was empty. I went down to Ashford and picked up the keys from the agents and drove off down there to do it. Parked in the rather large car park, walked across to the door, took out the key I'd been given, put it in the door and started to cry. And I didn't understand that. I don't normally go around crying, but I did. It was really very, very strange. To know what that was about, opened the door, went in, got on with the job. About lunchtime or just after, I'd done the outside, started doing the inside, been up in the roof, done the roof, came down the ladder. And as I came down the ladder, there's a man standing here, completely just behind my line of vision, but it was almost as clear as day. I thought, oh, someone's come to see me. Went down the rest of the ladder, turned round, nobody there, nobody at all, nobody in the building. My imagination, of course, didn't think much of it, got on with the job. In the evening, took the key back, and when I took the key back in, the agent was actually there, a chap called Nigel. He said, hello Doug, have you been down to do that job? I said, yeah. He said, terrible thing, wasn't it? I said, sorry? Horrible thing that happened. I said, I don't know what you're talking, sorry, I don't know, what are you going on about? Well, the owner was killed, he was murdered in the restaurant. I said, I think I saw him. Now, that's really weird. I knew nothing about the story of that place. When I arrived, I started to cry. When I came down that ladder, I was just got my head below the thing. Still got a good few steps to go down, and I saw a guy standing there. But he wasn't there. I'd never heard the place was in any way haunted. I've never heard since it was haunted. Whatever happened. It was just one of those things. But again, I don't understand it. I didn't properly see it, and as soon as I turned round, because I got my feet on the ground, there was nobody there. So that's a bit odd. A very similar thing happened out at West Beckham. I was doing a job there, again, a cottage built must have been 400 years old. I was done my bits and pieces, doing moisture meter tests, which means you're bending down and sticking a meter into the walls and things like that. The back door was open. It was a summer's day, the place was empty. And this little dog, little tykey thing, sort of went past me. Again, I'm looking there and it went past me. Yeah, I'm going to check that. There's a reason I'm doing that. Anyway, this dog went past me, and I just got on with the job, and I thought, well, at the end of the job, better make sure the dog isn't anywhere. He'd gone through, there was only one door open, he hadn't gone past me again. It wasn't there at all. One of the things that I recommended was done with sort of some damp proofing treatment and some woodworm treatment. And about a month, 6 weeks later, I was talking to one of the directors of the company who did the work, and he said, my bloke saw the dog. Did you see the dog? I said, I saw a dog. I said, why? But it wasn't there. He said, no, precisely. He said, apparently there's this dog that just runs around all the time. His blokes had seen it. I'd seen it. Coincidence? Imagination? I haven't got a clue. I keep looking at this. This is weird. We'll come on to it. I've had this for years. I've lost it a number of times. Always in here. I don't understand that. I've never lost it anywhere else. It's got two clips, a magnetic and a mechanical clip on it. I was doing this talk last week, and it fell off. And somebody said, "You've dropped your bracelet." So I said, "Oh, that's funny. That only ever happens up here." So I picked it up and put it back on again. And when I came to go, the guy sitting there sort of said, "Your bracelet's on the floor again." So this, we'll come on to the Dode child later on, but I'm not at all sure if there is such a thing, that it's not quite playful, because I've never lost this over the years I've had it anywhere else but in this place, and twice last weekend. So I'm rather hoping that someone will notice and say at the end of the evening, your bracelet's come off, but I imagine because I'm going to keep looking at it, it probably won't. Again, did I just catch it on something? I don't know. But really, really odd. So let's do another one. Buildings that are ancient, including this one, obviously have some form of atmosphere that's grown over the years because of the people that have been in it, the people that have lived in it, that have died, loved in it. It must pick up something of those people. And normally people associate ghosts and things like that with ancient buildings. It's not always, again, if it is a ghost, I don't know. Not always old places. Modern places can be sort of affected. To me, when you... I spent my life going in different buildings almost daily, mainly old. Not always, but mainly. And some of those, the majority of those buildings, probably like your own house at home, like my home, are, if you like, welcoming but sort of neutral. They're just nice. And just occasionally you walk into a place that is almost wraps itself around you. It doesn't happen very often, but it does occasionally happen. It certainly happened to me on a few occasions in my life, where you've walked into a building and you felt instantly loved, or I don't know, just a part of everything, and it sort of wraps itself around you. And other buildings very occasionally can be troubled, aggressive even. I'll give you two examples of, I can't give you an example of one that sort of wraps itself around you. The one that sticks out most in my mind is a place down at Canberra that again did years ago, and I just walked in and I've never felt more wanted or loved in a way. Buildings sort of went like that, gave you a cuddle. A few have done that. The one at Campbell is probably the most extreme example. But we'll talk about the other side, the troubled side. They don't all have to be old buildings, in my experience anyway. Again, I never saw anything, but I experienced something which was odd. I was doing a survey, a modern bungalow in Aylesford, so not far from here. Again, empty, just getting on with the job, and I've been doing it for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, I don't know, and all of a sudden there's this unbelievable strange smell. I've never smelt embalming fluid, but that's what sprang to mind. Now why that should spring to mind I don't know, because I've never smelt it, so I don't know what it smells like. But that's just what sort of came to mind. And this was a modern bungalow. The doors were all sort of double glazed, the windows were all triple glazed, the place was insulated to within an inch of its life. Poor building couldn't breathe almost. Buildings need to breathe as well, but this one didn't. But anyway, and this horrible smell, and it really got inside you. And all of a sudden, something came into my face, like that. There wasn't anything there, I didn't see anything, but I was aware of it. And I thought, well, that's really odd. And gradually, whatever happened sort of developed. Somebody walked by me and went like that. I felt the wind of, almost like somebody was trying to slap me or something. You could feel wind in your face. You realise there was somebody or something right in your face, as they say. I got to a stage where I sort of, a bit strange. Anybody see you doing it? But I just sort of said, look, I'm only going to be here for about another half an hour. Why don't you just lay off? I'll get on with my job. You do whatever you want to do, and then I'll be gone. And that was odd. It did sort of back off for a while, and then it came back after about half an hour, perhaps because I was a bit there longer than I said I would be, I don't know. But I ended up sort of talking to nothing. But there was something, and it wasn't nice. It wasn't nice at all. It didn't frighten me. I'm quite curious. I like to know what the hell's going on. But I'd like to know what's happened to these people that didn't turn up. They're probably still wandering around out there, aren't they? Anyway, yeah, I'm curious. I'd like to know. I'm prepared to, sort of talk to things or think about things. I'm never going to run. Well, I did once. That was down in Sutton Valence. No, not Sutton Valence. Yes, Sutton Valence. Just at the top of the hill there, the big Edwardian house. I'd met people. I was due to meet my clients there. Again, empty. I was due to meet my clients there, and I was just getting on with the job, really, and I hadn't been there very long, probably only about 10-15 minutes. I was still walking around trying to find out where everything was and understand the layout of the house, which is the first thing that you do. And upstairs somebody walked across the floor, and I thought, oh, they must be here already. So I went upstairs, fully expecting to see my clients. But there was nobody there. And so I came back down, and I heard somebody walking across the floor again. I've got to bear in mind it's an empty house. Floorboards, you can hear people walk across empty houses and floorboards, they're like a drum. So I thought, what's going on? I went upstairs and there was nobody there. I thought, that's really odd. Again, not too concerned or in any way, just that's what happened. And then I can't remember what it was. It didn't break, but something flew off the mantelpiece. There was still furniture in this house. It was partly furnished, and it just flew across the room, off the mantelpiece. It's the only time I've ever sort of walked out of a place, locked up, and never gone back. I was, I suppose I was frightened. I didn't want, whatever that was quite powerful. I didn't want to be in that place. I can't remember what I told my clients. I think I said I'd sprained my ankle or something and I couldn't do the job. But I wasn't going to go back there. And the interesting thing is, whenever I go past that place, which I do quite regularly, going down to see friends at Headcorn and things like that, I still sort of cast my eye over it and think, ooh, it's a bit chilly. Something's a bit odd. So there we go. So there's a few examples of things that have happened to me. And then we come on to this place. As I say, it's ancient. It's in the middle of nowhere. Some people find it quite eerie. I don't. I don't know what you got. Anybody feel uncomfortable? No?
Homely.
Yeah, okay. Well, I did a talk 3 weeks ago here and about ley lines. And one or two people, they just didn't want to go. They were quite comfortable sitting. In the end, I said, look, I'm going to turn the heating off in a minute because I want to go home. And they admitted we don't want to go. It's really nice in here, really, really cosy. We're warm and it's interesting. And I said, well, I'm going to turn the heating off. You can stay if you like. Of course, light-heartedly, don't want to be rude to people, but it's true. I don't find anything eerie or strange about this place. The strangest thing is match shooting, mist all over the darn place. But we sort of come on to this place. It is in the middle of nowhere. It is old. It has a terrific history. Pagan, Roman, Saxon, Norman. Just that alone, for God's sake, people have been coming here for 5,000 years almost. You're just the tip of an iceberg, and there's going to be people beyond you long after I've gone. And that's the fascinating thing. And so this place has a certain sort of legend, if you like. Whether it's a headless horse or a disappearing well, or the Dode Child. Now, so we'll come on to the Dode Child this morning, just to find out whether there's anything recently, because things go online quite quickly. Knowing I was going to be here this evening, I thought, I'll just have a quick look online and see if there's anything about the Dode Child. There was, which was quite interesting. The Dode Child is a child that is meant to haunt the place. Okay, the story goes back at least 250 years. There is an oil painting that was done in 1780 of the Dode Child, and we have a photograph of the oil painting, and I'll come on to that later on. But while I was looking online, there wasn't anything particularly, but there was something I saw, which I will play in a second, and that is a folk group called Raven's Wedding. Had written and perform a song about the Dode Child. And I only found this morning, so we streamed it, and Matt's going to play it for you for a few moments. I wasn't expecting to find something like a folk song about the Dode Child.
As the sun creeps up at the start of each day, I asked, did you see a child come this way? For many have seen her over the years, alone in this churchyard has mourning whispers. And I've searched down through time since 1349, since the Black Death came and stole our village away. Have you seen the Dode Child? Have you seen a girl running wild? Have you seen the Dode Child waiting here? The plague, it took us one by one, friends, my husband, me and my son. In the end there was just my daughter alone. She lay in this church and her head on our bones. Now she still lingers here. From time to time she'll appear, and one day I pray I shall find my poor lost girl. Have you seen the Dode Child? Have you seen a girl running wild? Have you seen the Dode Child waiting here? Have you seen the Dode Child? Have you seen a girl running wild? Have you seen the Dode Child waiting here?
Well, we won't play it all. I didn't expect to find that. I was looking for people who've written something more about the Dode Child, but I thought, if you'll excuse the pun, that's quite haunting. So there we go. The Dode Child. Yeah. That song refers to the Dode Child being a girl. The Dode Child is meant to be about 7 or 8 years old, and was meant to be, and I keep saying meant to be, the last surviving person here following the Black Death in 1349. That story goes back, we know, at least to 1780, when this oil painting was done of the Dode Child. What we're trying to do at the moment, it was in a local farmhouse, and then it sort of vanished. And we're trying to find it and bring it back here. So hopefully one day, the perceived wisdom is at the moment it's somewhere up in Norfolk, this painting. But the painting would appear to depict, as the song says, as the perceived wisdom is, a small girl. Now, when I came here, I obviously was told all about the Dode Child, etc., etc., and I didn't. I was too busy trying to put the roof back on and do other things to get too wound up about a little legend, if you like. But after a while, not being here too long, one of the first things we did was bring some diggers and things in, and cherry pickers to do the roof, diggers to tidy up the ground. It was a bit of a mess here. We're going back 35 years. This place inside was nothing like it is now. There was nothing inside apart from graffiti on the walls, spliff ends on the floor, needles and lager cans. Door had been burnt off. The place was a mess. Good looking mess, but a mess. And as I say, I was too busy, but eventually we started bringing things like a JCB up and various other things. And all of a sudden, I became aware of something just never in here, outside. There used to be an old gate over there where you suddenly come in between those two brazier things and walk down the path. There used to be a gate there, and I became aware of what I perceived was a little boy. Now, I never saw the little boy. It was there, slightly behind me, out of my line of vision, but certainly there. And but I understood the Dode child was a little girl. Now, this whatever it was, I was quite convinced it wasn't a girl, it was a boy, and it was fascinated by machinery. So whenever we had anything working here, you stood a good chance of actually sort of sensing it. And I didn't quite understand what was going on. Still don't. The first thing I did was, for no other reason, I was talking to a woman called Rosemary Hawthorne. You can look her up on Wikipedia or whatever you like. She has the wonderful title of the Knicker Lady. Can't help it, that's what she's called. And I was talking to Rosemary, this is a long time ago, and I was talking about the Dode child, and I showed her the picture, the photograph of the oil painting that I referred to. And she sort of looked at it. She said, "What a charming little boy." And I said, "No, that's a girl, because patently it's a girl in the picture." And she said, "No, in those days that's how they used to dress their children. Just because it's wearing a frock doesn't mean," a bit confusing like it is now, we've all gone round in a circle, but she said, "No, just because he's wearing a frock doesn't make him a girl." And so she was not just an expert apparently in Queen Victoria's underwear, but also in medieval dress and stuff like that, and Georgian dress. So anyway, so she said, "No, that girl is a boy," and that sort of tied up with what I'd perceived. And again, the months, years even moved on, and I had a woman who, she was obviously sort of troubled in some way, and some people come to this place because they think it has answers. It ain't got no answers at all. The answers are in your own head. They're not here. But sometimes it helps, and it's helped friends of mine. But she was going through a very difficult part of her life. She had a daughter, about 8-9 years old, and she wanted to talk to me, and I didn't know what to say. I knew she wanted to talk to me, and I was expected to say something profound. I hadn't got a clue. So I had a word with a priest friend of mine, a chap called Wilfred McGreal, who was the prior of Aylesford at the time, and I sort of said, "What do I do? Do I just ignore her, or do I meet her?" And he said, can't do any harm to me, but and then told me what to say. Typical priestly thing, it couldn't mean anything. Anyway, so I was up here. It was January, middle of January. It was in the early days. We used to have a fire in the middle there. It was cold. We didn't have straw and we didn't have the benches or anything. Just an empty shell, really. And I had the fire alight. Basically just come in, you built a fire. It was amusing. Wouldn't do it today. Anyway, this woman rocked up about sort of 3:30, January. We were sitting here just on benches on the edge of the wall talking. And her daughter, quite a funny little girl, obviously bored. And we didn't have a door either back in those days. Just a piece of hardboard, which obviously wasn't there then. And the little girl sort of wandered out. By now it's about 4 o'clock, it's just getting dark, the sun's set. And we're chatting away. And this girl starts talking to somebody. And she was just up the path. And her mother sort of looked at me, jumped up, quite rightly. It's dark, we're in the middle of nowhere, sitting in a deserted church with an open fire in the middle. It's a bit odd, isn't it? But it's true. Mum jumped up, shot out the door, and I wasn't too far behind. And the girl is standing up there where the gate used to be, chatting away like this, to nothing. And this is true. And her mother said, "What are you doing?" And the girl, quite precocious little girl, sort of turned around and looked at her mother as if, like that. "I'm just talking to this boy." And I just backed off. I don't want to get too involved in this. The way she said it, that didn't leave any room for doubt. She was just eyeballing somebody at her own level and chatting away. Her mother said, "Don't be so silly, come in," which obviously she did. And that was an end to it. But that's as true as I'm sitting here. And the years sort of moved on a little bit. A couple of years went by, and it would have been 25 years ago. We were building the retreats down there, and I was quite busy. I didn't have time to be up here every day. And one of the things that we had a building site that, again, restoring ancient buildings, etc. It was all to do with old buildings, and these were timber frame cottages. And so I had a guy working for me called Steve, and I sort of said to him, "Look, I'm too busy. I want you to take over looking after the 2 cottages we're building at Dode. Go and project manage them," which he sort of jumped at, but I probably did that. Oh, bugger. Which he sort of jumped at because it meant he didn't have to do much physical labour. He just had to sort of wave his arms and shout a lot like I used to at people. Anyway, I was up here for a couple of days. I was just getting on with the other businesses that I was running and doing. And one day I went home and my wife said, "Have you upset Steve?" I said, "No." "Why?" So she said, "He's in a really funny mood. He came in tonight, wanted to see you." And I said, "Well, I'll see him tomorrow." And the next day he came to see me, I think first thing in the morning. And he said, I said, you want to see me? Yeah, he said, I won't work at Dode anymore. So I said, sorry. He said, I'm not going to work at Dode anymore. I said, well, you work for me and I've asked you to go to Dode. He said, yeah, but I'm not going to. I said, why? He said, it doesn't matter, I just don't want to. I'm not going to. He's quite a shirty little sod. And I said, well, yeah, if you feel like that, okay, we'll talk about it, but you've got to give me a reason. And I'd never discussed the Dode child with him. Nobody else had. He knew nothing about this. He genuinely didn't. He wouldn't be the sort of bloke that you would think would be so unnerved about anything. I said, so what's going on? He said, well, there's something up there. I said, sorry, there's something up there. I said, what do you mean there's something up there? And I thought, oh dear, here we go. He said, well, something's up there and it keeps looking at me. I said, what do you mean there's something up there that keeps looking at you? What a stupid thing to say. He said, no, it's not. And he said, I'm not going to work there, don't care what you say. And he was quite shirty. And I sort of said, well, what is it? Where is it? And he said, well, you know where the old gate used to be? And I said, yeah. He said, it's there. And I said, well, what is it? He said, I don't know, but it's about that high. I couldn't explain that. I'd never discussed it with him. No one else had discussed it with him. And that's what happened. He didn't come up here to work anymore. He was just, I guess, too frightened. I used to come up here regularly, and you'd always see it there. Interestingly, I read a paper that your peripheral vision, are you all aware your peripheral vision is better than your straight looking? Yeah? No? Yes? Mm. You don't think it is?
I think it is, yeah.
You think it is,
yeah? I believe it.
Anyone else? Yeah. If you at night, if you're looking for a light, a dim light, it's easier to not look for that light there. It's easier to look for it there. Interestingly, I read something some years ago that the SAS are taught the way to look like that rather than like that. Presumably they can catch people trying to creep up on them sideways or something like that. Nothing to do with ghosts or anything. But there clearly is something about your peripheral vision. This whatever this was, I could always see it there. And I know it sounds silly, but often I would be walking up the side of the church towards where the gate was, realising there was something there, not looking at it, looking straight ahead, putting my hand out and talking to it. But of course it was never there. I've never seen it. It's been there. And then I was doing this talk last week, and the guy that has tried to asphyxiate us all with the smoke machine up the back is our wonderful photographer, in-house photographer Matt. And I was talking about this last week, and completely unbeknown to me, because I'd never discussed it with. You've never been to one of these talks before last week?
I've been to one of these talks before until last week.
No. And all of a sudden, Matt sort of pipes up. Now, Matt's here most weekends, or a lot of weekends. Probably takes, I don't know, 700, 800 pictures?
I'll keep going.
1,000 pictures. Well, at least one's got to be good, hasn't it? But no, look, Matt takes loads of pictures. That's the way photography is done today, and of weddings, of whatever we're doing. Anyway, I'm talking about the Dode child, and I'm talking about there. And all of a sudden, Matt sort of pipes up, which was completely unexpected. Do you want to tell him that?
Well, I've never heard of the Dode Ghost at all. I didn't know that there was a gate. There used to be a gate at the end of the path or something. I found that out last week. I've never been to one of these things at all. And I've been to more than one wedding where lots of people like reportage photography, you know, just what's happening there. And it's nice to get shots of the little kids and stuff because they grow up very quickly and people look back at the photos. And on more than one occasion, you know, more than one occasion, several occasions, I've got shots of, I mean, it happened once. There's a little kid sitting just at the end of the path, just there, playing with the stones and passing them to someone else. Like, that's what it looks like, you know. And you get this lovely shot, and they're just playing with the gravel on the ground, you know, that's it. But then, when Dad was talking last week, I realised that I've done that about 5 times out there, in exactly the same spot, with children, doing exactly the same thing. And I could honestly go through all my pictures, it would take me ages, and find these shots. There might be one on my website, actually, of people in exactly the same spot. But then, when Dad was talking, he was talking about the gate, and I thought he was talking about the gate as you come in. And it was only as we walked out that someone said, that's where the gate was, at the path, at the end of the path. And I said, well, I thought you were talking about that gate. I thought, it couldn't have been right, because that's where I'm talking about, where the path is. Basically, it's it. And it is a bit spooky, and I do think it plays, because whilst I've been filming, I've got this on a function that's automatic for this low light, and 3 times it's changed on its own. I haven't touched it, and I have to keep just about with the camera. It goes dark, keeps going dark. Whilst you're talking, but it's only started doing it since you're talking about this child. Oh, sorry about that, but
Well,
there you go.
last
3
week,
times it's changed to the setting automatically.
I look, if I don't know. I'm not here to convince anybody ghosts exist or they don't exist. I don't know. It's very simple. But whatever, there is something here that is playful. Nothing's ever been nasty, and I've been up here a lot of the time, and all times of the day and all times of the night. And there's something here that's playful. I mentioned this coming off. I just keep touching the damn thing, which I don't normally do. And it's come off in this church a number of times, almost like somebody wants it. When we came here, we didn't have any electricity or any water or anything. Just had 4 walls and a roof with no tiles. It's a bit damp. No car park, no cottage, no columbarium, nothing like that. And one of the early things we did was put electricity in. Now, it was just me and a chap called Colin at the time, Colin Green, who's a local man who helps me, still does. And we had electricity put in. And I was forever saying to Colin, why did you leave the lights on last night? And he was forever saying, I didn't. And occasionally he would say to me, I went up the church this afternoon, why did you leave the lights on? And I would say to him, I didn't. And that happened, whatever it was, that they would come on and off, and it still does happen occasionally. It used to happen, it doesn't anymore down in the cottages. When we first built the cottages, the lights would go on and off, or the heating would go on and off. And we were always accusing each other. I don't know. Perhaps I did leave the lights on, and perhaps he did leave the lights on. But it then got weird, because what we got under here, believe it or not, we've got underfloor heating. We put it in many years ago, basically because we were going to start doing weddings at Christmas. And brides, as you know, don't tend to wear an awful lot, and certainly not big woolly coats and things. They want to shine. We need to provide a degree of heat, and indeed we will be this Christmas for 3 or 4 weddings. So we put underfloor heating in. It's electric underfloor heating, and it's controlled by a time clock at the back there. Now, when we put this in, well, first of all, it was okay, and after a few months, the electricity bill went through the roof, and we're now talking 20 years ago roughly. Nothing to do with recent hikes in electricity, but our bills suddenly went through the roof. So much so that we got the electricity supply company here to change the meter, and then to change the meter again, and then to put a check meter in. And they kept sending me horrendous bills, seriously high bills. And we kept saying, look, it's an empty church, we only use it twice a week for weddings. You know, we can't be using that much electricity. Anyway, whatever did this, and I still don't understand it to this day. In fact, we had to have now 3 different switches put in. Something, and again I accused Colin of this, and he said, don't be ridiculous, I'm not bright enough to be able to do that, it's too technical. Something had switched on at 1 o'clock, off at 2 o'clock, on at 3 o'clock, off at 4 o'clock, on at 5. Every hour it just changed, on, off, on, off, on. This went on for months before we found out what it was. What on earth did that? Of course, it was on for an hour, but it wasn't getting hot enough for us to notice it was on. It went all through the summer. And then it went off again, and then it went on again, so it never heated up, but it used for 12 hours out of every 24. We were using, it takes quite a start to get this underfloor heating going. This is not cheap. Even now, I'm very careful of when we use it. We've got to know it's going to be damn cold and stuff like that. So something played with that meter to switch it on and off every hour. If that's a ghost, it's a bloody sight cleverer than Colin is, and it's quite a lot brighter than me, because it must have taken us 6 months to work out what the hell it was doing. But what else? I don't understand. No one else at that time. Now we've got a team of people here. Probably about 8 people have got got keys to the place, because we're busier. I don't understand. It was just me and him. I never did it, and as he said, I wouldn't know how to do it. There you go. Really, really strange. So the Dode child is, it's a bit odd, because I think it's gone. We had the 18th of December 2010. We had a carol concert that night, and the weather forecast was horrendous. It was going to snow. And as the carol concert left, people started leaving about 9 o'clock, it just started to snow. Well, we had a wedding the next day, and I said to my wife, look, I'm going to stay at Dode, because it's meant, the snow forecast is horrendous. And I always stay at Dode. I'll sleep in the retreat, and at least if nobody else can get up here, the place will be open, the candles will be lit, we'll be ready to go. And so it showed how hard it snowed. It took her, I live about half an hour away. It took her and my friends 2 hours to get back to our place. It was a real bad night. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I was woken up, down the bottom, by somebody shouting, a woman. And I sort of got out of bed and looked. The snow had stopped by then. It was pretty deep, very silent, moonlit night, quite a nice night. But there was nobody about. But I'd heard somebody shouting. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't really think much of it. It's Dode. Maybe it was an owl, maybe it was a muntjac or something, because we've got a few little deer up in the woods. Went back to sleep. Woke up about 5 o'clock, heard somebody shouting again. It was a woman calling, I'm sure. I looked out, and again, it was a beautiful, sort of, well, still night. Deep snow, very silent. And I heard a woman calling. She was over there somewhere, I'm sure, twice in the course of a couple of hours. Wondered what the hell was going on. Woke up the next morning, and it turned out to be quite an interesting day, which I forgot all about the woman, because there was a girl, a bride, stuck on the A2, and the local media got it first of all, this just before Christmas. Stranded bride, can't get to the church, needs help. And away that went. That story ran that night. In fact, it went international the next day. And we ended up with more media here than we did actually guests managing to get here. Bloody reporters and the TV crews and the big vans with their aerials could get here, but a lot of the guests didn't. It's quite amusing. But anyway, the bride and the group got here. We did the wedding, and we couldn't do the reception. It was just too bad, so we went down the pub, and it was an interesting day. I didn't think any more about the woman calling at 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning. Never thought any much more about it. That story went around the world. It was a bit of fun. Christmas, white wedding. A friend of mine from Australia rang up the next day. He said, "Yeah, Doug, mate. Hello, Derek, how are you? Oh, well, you've got a lot of snow up your church, mate." I said, "How do you know that? You've just been on the telly." And that sort of takes you forget about women calling at 3 and 5 o'clock in the morning, don't you? I haven't seen the Dode child since, personally. Now, I'm not saying it isn't there, but I haven't seen it. And it's a really weird thing. And Matt's taken pictures of, and we've had other people contact us and send us pictures occasionally, not very often, but occasionally. Who is this person in the on these pictures? That they weren't guests at our wedding. I have no idea. So there's the Dode child, girl, boy, probably, ghost, possibly, no idea. But everything's true. And just a couple of other things. I was doing this talk last year, and one of the things I had forgotten all about, because again I haven't seen any, or we haven't had any pictures recently, but in the early days we used to get bucket loads of them. Pictures with orbs. You all okay with orbs? Yeah. So we got a picture with these little things floating around all over the place. I mean, discussion with Matt last week as to whether they're motes of dust in the air, whether they're moisture in the atmosphere, whatever they are. Some people say they're spirits. Personally, I've seen so many of the damn things in the early days I couldn't believe it. Sometimes it was like a snowstorm in here, but that hasn't happened. Be interesting to see if you get anything on this video after it's gone up and down a few times.
Very weird.
Sorry?
So it's playing up very weird.
Oh, well, there you go. Orbs. And so I hadn't really thought about them until last year when I was doing, I do this talk 2 or 3 times a year, mainly around Samhain, because it's the natural time to do it, isn't it? My daughter just lost one of her dogs. In fact, we were there when she had to have it sort of put down. God, they're like kids, aren't they? You know, everyone's distraught. But anyway, she had the dog cremated, and they took the ashes down to, I think, down on the Camel, down in Cornwall, where they spend a lot of time, and the dogs love it down there on the beaches, and she gets the ashes and she's tipping them into the sea, and Paul is videoing it, and all of a sudden there's this blue ball where she's tipping the ashes, and she said, "There's this blue ball, Dad." She said, you know all about that, won't you? I said, "Oh, I don't really know about it, but I understand what you're talking about." And it did come out on the video, and she sent the clip of the video, and there's this little blue ball where she's tipping the ashes, and it's floating and moving around quite energetically. I thought, and I said, well, I've seen lots of orbs and things at Dode on films and photographs, and so because of that, 2 talks ago, back last year now, I was talking about orbs as I'm talking now, and there was a few people take pictures and stuff like that, as they often do, and the next day I got an email from a gentleman who was here listening to the talk, and he said, "You may be interested in this. While you were talking about that orb and your daughter's dog, I took this picture of you." And there's an orb down there. Now, what is that? Is that coincidence? What's it all about? I have no idea. What on earth my daughter's dog would want to come back to Dode for? He did actually like it here. Yeah, in fairness, all the dogs do. But that's daft, isn't it? Now, is that something that's projected, perhaps from me, that I produced that? Did I produce, for some reason, that whatever that was, I can't remember, that flew off the mantelpiece and smashed into the floor? The thing that gives the lie to that is the Dode child, because you have a picture that's nearly 250 years old, an oil painting. You've got a little girl who talks to it. You've got a builder with a neck thicker than my waist who refuses to come up here because of it. You've got a photographer who seems to have taken a few pictures of it without actually even realising it, or taken pictures of something that's communicating with it. Now, I can't do all that no matter what happens. So, although I say I haven't seen anything, and I genuinely haven't, I've been aware, I've felt things, I've sort of seen things move. I've never actually seen if you like, a grey lady or a monk or something like that. Never. I'm still not sure I believe in it or I don't, but there you go. If anyone's got any questions, I've finished. You probably all want to get off down the pub. But I finished. But thank you for coming. If anyone's got any questions, I will try to answer them. But I'm just as confused as I've always been. I'm not here to convince anybody. But thank you for coming anyway. Thank you.